Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. I used to do DoorDash on the side, just for some extra cash, nothing too crazy. Until a few months ago, when something happened that I still can't stop thinking about. And to be honest, I haven't done a single delivery since. It was around 11 p.m. and I was finishing up my last order for the night. The delivery was in a quiet, upscale LA neighborhood, nothing out of the ordinary. I pull up, leaving the car running like I always do, grab the food, and then drop it off. Super normal, no weird vibes from the customer or anything of that sort. But as I walk back to my car, something feels off. I can't explain it, but the air felt heavier, like I could sense something was wrong before I even got to the door. I get in the driver's seat, close the door, and glance in the rearview mirror. And that's when I see him. There's a guy sitting in my back seat, just sitting there, hoodie pulled low over his face, completely still. And my heart stopped. I was frozen, staring at him through the mirror, trying to figure out how the hell he got in my car. I managed to stammer out, Can I help you? And that's when he leans forward just a little, and I can finally see his eyes. They were wide and bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in days. He leans back again and in the calmest voice says, "Drive." I don't know why, but I did. I started driving, my mind racing, trying to figure out what to do. He didn't say anything else, just sat there completely calm while I drove through these dark streets, and I'm just freaking out inside, thinking that this is it? This is how I'm going to get robbed, or worse. But then he tells me to turn down a side street. It's dark, barely any streetlights, and I'm just thinking, this is where it's going to go down. But right as we approach a gas station, well lit, a few people around, I slam on the brakes, throw the car in park, and I jump out screaming for help. The gas station clerk runs out, and I'm yelling that there's a guy in my back seat. But when we go back to the car, it's empty. The guy was gone. No sign of him anywhere. He just vanished. I have no idea how he got out so fast or where he went, but I didn't care. I got back in my car, locked the doors, and I drove straight home. I've replayed that night over and over and over in my head, and it still doesn't make sense to me. That was months ago, and I haven't touched the DoorDash app since. I don't know if I ever will. It's not worth risking something like that happening again. Ever since COVID, I have been using delivery apps consistently to get meals delivered to my house. DoorDash has saved me from cooking multiple times, and I recognize the drivers most of the time. I say thank you to them, leave a tip, and everything works perfectly. Other than an occasional missing item or issues with my order, I haven't had problems with the delivery driver. I guess I must have gotten lucky. One day, I ordered lunch from a local cafe and I waited for it to arrive like usual. I saw that it was being picked up by a different dasher and I just shrugged it off. I have it set to leave at my doorstep so that I don't have to interact with them. I got a notification and a message from them along with a photo of the package on my doorstep. After opening the door, picking it up, and then bringing it inside, I received another message. It was a picture of me, bent over, collecting my food with a message saying, "Nice ass. We should go on a date sometime." I wrinkled my nose in disgust, told them not to be such a creep, and then reported them to DoorDash. I got a general apology from the company with no explanation about whether the person was fired or not. But the fact that he knew where I lived kind of worried me. What if he decided to come back? I was tense for a week, or maybe two, making sure to keep my curtains closed and locking everything up at night, just in case. But finally, I fell into my normal routine again. I ordered food from a local pizza place in town for dinner. It was big enough and I could eat some, and I could also put the leftovers in the fridge for later on. I got the notification picture of the food, and I opened the door to see a man standing there holding my pizza in his hand. I froze awkwardly. Sometimes this happens where they don't actually follow instructions or they want to make sure that you get the food. So I said, "Hey, thanks. This was meant to be a faceless delivery." I was reaching my hands out to take the box, but then he said, I wanted to apologize for the picture I sent you. I wanted to make it up to you." "Oh, what?" I realized that it was him and that I froze. I was not sure what to say. But then he added, "Let me in." I quickly answered, "No, you can't come in. Just give me the pizza and go." I put my hand on the box and pulled, but he didn't let go. Opening the door behind me, he stepped forward, and I didn't want him inside the house. I had a feeling that he was going to hurt me somehow. Stepping back, slamming my door and putting my body weight behind it. He kept pushing on the door, and somehow I managed to put the chain on the door, but it didn't stop him from trying to grab me. I kept smacking my body on the door, and he screamed each time that I did, so he finally withdrew his arm enough for me to close it. I locked it, and then I ran to get my phone. I screamed at him that I was calling the police and that he needed to leave. The ringtone felt like torture. I saw him at different windows, yelling at me to open the door and let him in. I'm not sure afterwards if he hid somewhere or if a neighbor coming home scared him away. And thank God that the operator was great and she waited on the phone with me. I waited for the police to arrive, and they searched around outside to make sure that he was gone. I breathed a sigh of relief and told them what happened and then showed them the evidence. They did find my pizza in the front yard, and there was a strange powdery substance on it. It was taken away as evidence, so I don't know exactly what it was or if I'm able to say what it was either. I'm guessing he intended to drug me? I don't know why he didn't wait for me to pick it up, eat it, and then just do whatever. But I'm so thankful that he was an idiot and I didn't let him inside the house. My front door was a bit damaged and had to be repaired, but that was a small price compared to my safety and my life. I don't order delivery for food anymore. I either go and pick it up myself or I just make food at home. It has been much easier. You don't know what kind of people are handling your food when you're not looking or what they could be doing to it. So stay safe and always check your food. Hello everyone. I'm a 26-year-old male who was supposed to have a bright future, or so I thought. I had such high dreams, but things happened and I ended up never reaching them. So, here I am, working as a food delivery driver. Nothing wrong with it, pays my bills, and I can do it on my own schedule. But it's just not what I dreamt of. Anyway, that's a story for another day. Today, I wanted to share an experience that I had with my job that deeply unsettled me. Working as a food delivery driver, I've come across all sorts of people and situations. Most of the time, it's pretty routine. You pick up the order, drop it off, and then move on to the next one. But one night, something happened that left me feeling disturbed. It was late in the evening, one of those nights where the sky seemed darker than usual, with thick clouds blocking out the moonlight. I received an order for a house in a part of town that I wasn't too familiar with. It was a very simple order, just a burger and some fries. The streets were narrow and winding, with old trees lining the roads and their branches swaying gently in the cool night breeze. When I got the address, I noticed there were specific instructions. The note said to call when I arrived because the gate would be locked. It wasn't too unusual. Sometimes people had gates for security reasons, and they didn't always leave them open for delivery drivers, so I didn't think much of it at that time. The drive there was quiet, with hardly any cars on the road. I followed the directions, ending up in a neighborhood with large imposing houses set back from the street. Each house seemed to have its own patch of darkness, with tall hedges and thick trees casting long shadows. And when I finally found the house, it was larger than I expected, with a wide stone driveway leading up to a tall iron gate. I parked in front and took a moment to take in my surroundings. The house stood back from the road, its windows dark and unwelcoming, and the place seemed empty. Yet I had a sense that someone was watching from within. I pulled out my phone to call the number provided, letting the customer that I had arrived. After a brief exchange, the instructions changed. I was to enter through a side entrance and deliver the food directly to the back porch and to wait for the customer there so that I could get my tip. This meant that I would leave my car outside of the gate and just go in through a small entrance on the side. This kind of set off a small alarm bell in my mind. It was unusual for customers to ask me to go beyond the front door, especially when the area was so unfamiliar to me. But despite my hesitation, I decided to go along with it. I didn't want to cause any issues or get a bad review. I grabbed the food and made my way around the side of the house. And the air was colder there, and I felt a slight chill as I walked along the gravel path that wrapped around the property. As I reached the side entrance, I noticed how quiet it was. There was an eerie stillness in the air, the kind that made you hyper aware of every sound, like the crunch of gravel under my feet or the rustling of leaves overhead. I found the gate mentioned in the instructions. It was slightly ajar, creaking softly as it swung in the breeze. I hesitated, instinct screaming at me to turn back. The thought of leaving the food at the gate crossed my mind, but I didn't want to leave the customer hanging. So I pushed through the gate, stepping to a small courtyard that led to the back porch. The porch light was on, luckily, casting a harsh glow against the wooden deck, but inside the house did not have any lights on, which was weird. I set the food down on a small table near the back door, and I took a step back and waited for the customer. I realized that maybe I should knock or call out to let them know that I was already there. So I turned around to face the door, and as I did, a shadow moved behind one of the windows. I couldn't see who it was, just the outline of a figure standing there. Well, was standing there since they seemed to duck down so that I couldn't see them and I wouldn't know that they were there. This sight sent a shiver down my spine. Something about the way they stood, so still and silent, just watching me, and then trying to hide their presence was so unsettling. I mean, what was the reason for them doing that? I thought to myself that whatever they were planning, I do not want any part of it. So, I turned quickly, eager to get back to my car. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like eyes were following me, tracking my every move. I hurried back through the gate, letting it swing shut behind me with a clang. And as I retraced my steps, I could hear some commotion from inside the house. So I sped up and I started jogging to my car. And then I heard it, the slamming of a door when you try to open it quickly with force and it just hits the wall. And then footsteps, running footsteps. I did not look back and I was sprinting to my car. Luckily, I was able to open it up quickly, jumped in, and just as I locked it, I heard a banging on my car window and a sound of them trying to open my door. I looked up for a bit and I saw a man wearing a tank top with a deranged look in his eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked disturbed or crazy. I'm not sure what word to use exactly, but there was one thing that I'm sure of, is that I didn't want to know what his plans were. So I started my car, I backed away without a care in the world, and I'm sure I ran over his foot and hit him with my side mirror because I heard him scream and my side mirror was damaged when I checked. I drove as fast as I could away from that place, and I did not stop driving until I reached my home. And after that incident, I took a couple of days off to calm down. It did hurt me a bit financially, but oh well, I needed that break. Unfortunately, I was so rattled that I didn't even think about calling the police until days later, and I still didn't do it since I thought that it was too late, and of course, the guy would have been gone by then. So yeah, that's my story. It was the most horrifying thing that I have ever experienced, and I hope that I never meet that man again. And to all drivers out there, please, please, stay safe, always. I had an odd encounter tonight that isn't too dramatic, but it was creepy enough to me that I thought that I would share. For context, I'm a guy working as a pizza delivery driver for around 2 years now. Usually, I really enjoy the job. Sure, there's a creep or weirdo here and there, but overall, most stops don't give me alarm bells like what I experienced tonight. Anyways, I drive up to this house and I immediately get a bit of an uneasy feeling. The guy seemed friendly enough on the phone, but you never know in this part of town. And his voice was rough, like he had been smoking his entire life. He doesn't come to the door at first, so I have a minute or so to glance through the door at the guy's living room. Usually, I wouldn't be so nosy, but the inside front door is wide open, leaving only a rickety glass door between me and his living room. As I try and spot where he is in the house, a lot of times we have to knock more than once, especially if it's an older customer. I noticed that he had some photos above the kitchen door frame, directly across from the front door. Normally this wouldn't be off, were it not what the photos were of and how they were placed. The first 2 photos weren't framed, and they seem to have been cut out of something. They're small and depict the same exact photograph. A grainy black and white portrait of a young boy, somewhere between the age of 6 and 10. And while it's weird that they're duplicates, what's even weirder is that they look like missing child photos, specifically the kind that you would see on a poster from the 70s or 80s. Think of missing kid photos like the ones of Ethan Pats, but specifically how they appeared on the milk carton, not just the original photographs. At first, I thought they might even be missing person reconstructions. They were so grainy, flat, and weird. And hung in between the two pictures was a little bundle of sticks. And they reminded me of those scented brooms that they sell in stores, except without the handle. On the other side of the bundle, there was an old newspaper clipping with a woman who had a hairstyle from the 60s or 70s. And just like the photos, it wasn't framed and instead just sort of taped to the wall. But before I could get a better look at it all, the guy came to the door and paid for his food, and I left with a tip and went on my way. Now, there could be a myriad of reasonable explanations for the photos, and besides, I'm in college to go into writing. I've got an imagination, and I've seen a serial killer story or two. I tried dismissing my initial gut feeling by wondering if it wasn't a memorial for a past friend or a family member. He could also just be one of those people who try and solve cold cases from home. However, the whole situation just gave me a very uneasy, sinister, and disturbing feeling that I can't quite shake. If they were just photos, I wouldn't have noticed. But like I said, these were photographed like missing child posters, not the kind of image that you'd have stuck on the living room wall in January. Even as someone who has a small vintage photo collection, my gut had a very negative reaction to them. I might be overthinking it, and I'm sure that there's an innocent explanation, but it's genuinely the first thing to creep me out on this job in a while. Working as a delivery driver at night is usually pretty straightforward. It was a job that I could fit around my classes, and it paid the bills. My name is Josie, and I have been doing this gig for a few months now. The routine was simple, and over time, I learned the best routes to take to avoid traffic and save time. Most nights were also uneventful, just me, my music, and the occasional late-night snack run between deliveries. One evening, I was on my usual shift, juggling a few orders, when I received a delivery request from a new address. It was a nice area with neat little houses and well-kept lawns. The order seemed routine until I got a message asking me to take a different route due to a supposed roadblock ahead. The message was polite and even thanked me in advance for understanding. It did seem odd, but sometimes construction crews work at night, so I didn't overthink it. As I drove through the quiet streets, I noticed that there weren't any signs of roadwork or barriers on my usual route. The streets were empty and dark, only lit by the streetlights that cast long shadows on the pavement. But I carried on, wondering if there had been some confusion. I followed the directions given to me and began to feel uneasy as the scenery changed. There were fewer houses, and the area looked increasingly deserted. The supposed detour led me down a narrow road where the streetlights were sparse. My instincts were telling me that something was off, but I was already halfway through, and I didn't want to waste time backtracking. I checked my rearview mirror frequently, a habit that I picked up whenever I felt anxious, and the road stretched ahead, empty and quiet, with nothing but the sound of my car's engine. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the address, double checking to make sure that it was correct. It was one of those newer homes with clean lines and big windows that made it look like it was plucked straight from a magazine. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the order. As I walked up the short path to the front door, the unsettling feeling lingered. I couldn't shake the thought that something wasn't right. I placed the food on the doorstep, stepped back a couple of paces, and waited a moment. The porch light flickered on, and I saw the door open just a crack, but no one came out. It was strange, so I politely called out, announcing that their order was delivered, and there was no response. The silence was so unnerving that I quickly returned to my car, just eager to leave. On my drive back, I couldn't stop thinking about the detour and how unnecessary it seemed. The thought nagged at me for the rest of that night, and the next day, I asked a fellow driver about any road work in the area, hoping to make sense of it. They hadn't heard of anything either, which only added to my confusion. I decided to avoid taking any more detours unless I saw it for myself. A week later, I got another delivery request from the same address. And this time, even with their instructions, I stuck to my normal route without any deviation. And to my surprise, there were no roadblocks, no workers, just the usual quiet streets leading directly to the house. I delivered the food normally and left. As I drove back, it dawned on me that the detour request hadn't just been unnecessary, it had been intentional. Someone had wanted to lead me away from my usual path for no logical reason. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't help but wonder about their intentions. Who was trying to mislead me, and why? Were they trying to test how easy it would be to either set me up or ambush me in the future? I don't know. But from then on, I paid extra attention on my routes, and I ignored any similar request unless I saw hard evidence. Delivering food was supposed to be an easy job, but now it felt like I had to watch my back more than ever. I know that this wasn't the scariest story on here, but it was creepy in my opinion, and I wanted to share. This happened 2 days ago, and I'm still very shaken up about it. I was with my brother and father. We were just at the immigration department in Hong Kong to sort something out for us. For further context, I'm 20 and female, and I'm not a local here. It was getting late, and my dad suggested that we start taking the bus back now to eat closer to the apartment area, or most good places would be close by then. And midway there was a stop that my brother suggested that we get off and find food. We all agreed, and I started to desperately need the toilet, and so my brother pointed at the closest McDonald's that we could see. Big mistake. We go in, my brother and dad are waiting downstairs, and I was under the assumption that, well, if there's no toilet downstairs, then there should be one up there. If not, then I'll leave and find another place. I walk up the stairs and look around, somewhat pacing, as I desperately need to pee. The McDonald's worker seemed to have spotted me and was looking at me, almost expecting me to bother him. I asked him if there's a toilet, and he said, "Toilet? Through the door, turn left, and take a lift up." It's an ominous brown door with no signs or anything at the front. He's the worker, so I assume that he knows better than me. I open it, and what the fuck? It's very dark and run down, a completely different vibe to the modern McDonald's. It was extremely quiet as soon as I closed the door. It was almost soundproofed. All the bustling loud noises in the McDonald's had completely stopped, and the room was just very dark with minimal white light. There were multiple doors that appear locked in the building. I didn't explore much as I thought that it may be a staff room. I turned the left corner as instructed, and there was indeed a lift. I assumed that maybe this is just a very odd passage to a shopping mall, which isn't too uncommon in Hong Kong, and surely, how bad can this be if there's a lift, right? I press the lift and I step in, and suddenly, I hear the door open and the worker that directed me goes into the lift with me as well. I notice he's holding a black bin bag that is filled with little to nothing. I assume, oh, okay, maybe he needs to put this out and help me find the toilet. Kill two birds with one stone. I ask him what floor do I press, and he presses the second floor. Once the door closes, it's a bit quiet and awkward. I glance at him for a second, and he was wearing a COVID face mask. One eye was looking forward, and he had a lazy eye looking to the side. Suddenly he says, "Lang Holing," which translates to, "You're very pretty," in Cantonese. At this point, it's very awkward, and I just said a quiet thank you to not aggravate him, and I'm wagering if I actually need to pee this badly now. The lift stops finally, and I was fully expecting a shopping mall when the lift doors open, but that was not the case. The doors opened, and it was just a dark, quiet, very rundown narrow hallway of doors. It was so dark with infinite corners. Not a single person was there but us, and I couldn't tell what the building was. An odd cross of abandoned apartment building doors and office doors. At this point, we both still stood in the lift, and my entire body is in a fight or flight response as the whole situation was making me fear for the worst. The worker gestures me to get off at this lift and almost wants to continue walking me to the toilet. I quickly make an excuse of, "Oh, I've bothered you so much already from your work. You can just point at the direction and I'll find it by myself. Promise." He points to the right and tells me to go through there, and that's the toilet. I thank him, and then I go to a complete opposite direction that he told me. The whole place was like a fucking maze, narrow hallway with doors, and I got curious, and I pushed at one of them, and it was locked. At this point, I'm really trying to stall enough time to appear that I went to the toilet before getting the lift back down. I get a call from my brother now, a very angry call asking why I've taken so long and where am I. I explained that I don't know where I am and I'm trying to find my way back. I hang up and I'm getting increasingly more scared as the place is giant and, as I mentioned, like an old abandoned office/apartment hallways with no signs or anything while being extremely dark with minimal light. The walls were all teared down. It was just so quiet and run down. There was no way a functioning toilet was up here. I'm really panicking now, and I'm trying to find my way back to the lift scared shitless. My initial discomfort of desperately needing to pee turned to desperately wanting to leave. I calm myself down a bit with breathing exercises, and I tried to recollect the steps that I took. And finally, I found the lift and quickly pressed back down. I pressed the close button so much, and the lift takes me back down to the hallway, but by accident, I walk forwards instead of turning right. What the fuck? There are more doors, 4 to 5 doors next to each other, But what was the most strange was the fact that the doors were all facing this large glass panel wall between the McDonald's. I was able to look at the McDonald's and people eating, but they didn't notice that I was there at all. I walked back and turned right this time through the door. I was finally in the McDonald's again, but that glass wall on my end appeared to be a large mirror in the McDonald's. It was a double mirror. I looked around and there was no sight of the McDonald's worker either. I quickly walked back down to the McDonald's and see my dad and brother. My dad asked if I was okay as I looked really pale. I said that I would tell him when we're out, and I asked him if he saw the worker again when they were waiting, describing him as a man with a mask on and a lazy eye. My dad shook his head and said that he didn't see any worker when he checked upstairs for me earlier. And my heart dropped as soon as I heard that. The worker was still up the lift. My dad also said, "Don't tell me you went through that lift. I opened that door and walked through a bit to find you. It was scary. Why were there so many doors? And that glass. I thought there was something wrong. I got out immediately." Bear in mind, my dad is a built-as-fuck man himself. He then sent my brother up to go look for me. Not sure why. My brother is pretty skinny and unathletic in comparison. He said that he opened the brown door just to see and then noped the fuck out. He described it as looking like a big dark back room with doors next to each other back to back, and he did not want to walk in there to explore. I will never go to the toilets alone again, and seeing a McDonald's will forever hold this memory for me. Edit. I found out recently, apparently, they devised a plan that my dad was going to go through every level through the brown door to start kicking down doors and shouting my name. He said that he had a very bad feeling. If he wasn't back down or back down with me within 15 minutes, my brother was instructed to call the police. My brother disagreed with the plan, suggesting that it will be best if they find all the exits and guard them now, banking on the fact that I'll be out at some point, as it's unlikely that they'll find me through every level in that lift and doors. I asked what would happen if I didn't come out through the exits, and then he said, "Well, at least we'll find your remains." Huh, morbid. This happened over a decade ago when I was 12 years old. I live in a small town in Oklahoma, and in my neighborhood, the houses are fairly spread apart, separated by woods. It was a school day, so my grandma picked me up from school and then brought me home. This was the first year that I got dropped off at my house alone. Before this, I would just go to my grandma's house after school. I would get dropped off at around 3 p.m. and my parents would be home at around 4:30. Not that big of a deal. Today, for some reason, my dad wasn't going to be home until later, around 7, and my mom, a teacher, wouldn't be home until around 8 p.m. because she had parent-teacher conferences at school. This happened in early fall, so it wouldn't even be dark until like 8:30 p.m. I did what I usually did when I got home. I ran upstairs, got on my Xbox 360, and played Minecraft with my friends. Today, it was just me and my friend Seth. I was playing for about 2 hours when I heard a car door shut in my driveway. No one should have been here until like 7 p.m. My house is set up to where my upstairs has windows that look over my driveway. So, with my mic on and controller in hand, I went to the window to see who it was. maybe my dad got home earlier than expected. I looked outside, and it was a red truck. No one I know drives a red truck. The person pulled into the middle of my driveway sideways, like he owned the place. And when I looked out the window, I saw a man with a hat, wearing a big camo hoodie and jeans. It was September, so no one should have been wearing a big hoodie and jeans in Oklahoma. By the time that I looked, he was already almost out of view, going up my walkway to my front door. I thought maybe it was one of my dad's friends, or someone my dad hired to do something. But he would usually tell me if someone was going to be coming over. Soon after, I hear a knock at the door, and then another. I go to my other window that has a better view of the walkway up to my front door, and I see the guy walking back down the walkway. I switch, and I go back to looking through the windows overlooking my driveway. I'm relaying all of this to Seth, still with my mic on. I tell Seth that he's walking back to his truck now, but instead, he walks past his truck and tries to open my garage side door. At this point, my heart sinks. I tell Seth that this guy just tried to get into my house. Mind you, it's literally broad day at like 5 p.m. Luckily, it was locked because sometimes we forget to lock it. After he tried the door, he starts walking to my back patio, and I drop my headset and I quietly run downstairs to see what he is doing. I get downstairs and stand behind the wall so I am not visible from the back door/living room windows. And I just listen. I hear him try to open the door. Then I hear a thud. It sounded like he dropped a brick on the ground or something. And at this point, I'm more scared than I have ever been. I wanted to call my parents or grandma, but I didn't have a cell phone yet. The only phone in the house was in my kitchen, and I would have to cross my living room to get there, and he would be able to see me if I went into there. A few seconds after the thud, I peeked around the corner, and then he was gone. I ran back upstairs and put my headset back on, telling Seth that he just tried to open the back door as well. And as I'm telling him this, I hear a car door shut. This time, when I look out the window, he finally got in his truck. I look at the truck closer, and I notice the only thing that he has in his truck bed was a crowbar and a shovel. He sat in his truck for what felt like a few minutes, and during this time, Seth told me to get my iPod and take a picture of his license plate. He was parked to where I couldn't see it, and then he drove backwards out of my driveway and then down the road. A few minutes after he was confirmed gone, I went downstairs to see what the thought could have been. I get to the back door, and I see that the doormat was moved. Both big plant pots had been moved as well. He was looking for a key. Holy fuck. We have a hidden key back there too. The key to the back door was under one of the smaller plant pots on a ledge near the door, not the bigger ones that he had checked under. I went to the front porch, and all the pots looked like they had been moved too. I don't know what I would have done if he was able to find the key, or if he just broke in. After he left, I called my dad and I told him what happened. When my dad got home, he had a cop come over, and I told him what happened and gave him a description. And the guy never came back. So this happened way back when I was a teen, and so the memories might be a bit fuzzy. Basically, my family used to own a dog. One night, I took the dog out to the backyard and I let him run around and stuff. I went back inside and I was going to let him back in soon. But then, my brother and I heard him barking a lot. He usually barks like crazy for no reason, so we were not worried about it much. A minute later or so, I went back out to bring him back in. Usually, my dog would not go in willingly. I would have to go outside and then yell his name. And as I was doing this, it was this time that my brother suddenly started screaming my name from his window. So essentially, he was screaming at me to come back inside. I did it without question. I had never heard him sound so worried before. I went to our room and I asked him what was wrong. Then he replied with something that chilled me to my bone. He said that he had seen someone standing directly behind me the whole time that I was in the backyard. It was then that I had remembered that I had left the back door open. So we got our mom, got a bat, and then went to the back door. We got our dog back inside and glanced around the backyard. Our shed door was wide open, which was unusual since we never used it. And earlier, my brother said that he saw a light in it. What I believe happened was someone broke into our shed when I took my dog out. A little while before this too, my brother swore up and down that he saw a man go into our backyard as well. I don't know if that was the same person or not, but it is possible. I know this story is not exactly the creepiest or anything, but I had never had something like this happen to me before, so I just thought that I would share it. I've always thought of myself as a calm and rational person. I live in a quiet suburb where life is pretty routine. My nights used to be peaceful, filled with the soft hum of crickets and the occasional croak of a frog from a nearby pond. But a few weeks ago, something happened that changed how I look at those quiet nights. It started on a Friday evening. I had just settled down on the couch, ready to relax with a book after a long week. Outside, the stars were beginning to peek through the evening sky, and the air had that crisp, cool feel that comes with the early autumn. Everything felt normal until I heard a strange noise from above, something scratching and sliding across the roof. At first, I thought it was a raccoon or maybe a stray cat. I'd heard stories about how they sometimes climb houses, but I have never experienced it myself. The noise continued, a soft shuffle followed by a thud, as if something heavy was being dragged just above my ceiling. I remember feeling a prickle of unease, but I just brushed it off. Animals could be clumsy, and it wasn't unusual for them to explore. The sound stopped after a while, and I figured whatever it was had moved on. But then the next night, it happened again. This time, the noise was more pronounced, like footsteps pacing back and forth. It was then that I realized that it couldn't be an animal. The steps were too deliberate, too human. The realization sent a chill down my spine. I turned off the lights and I peered out the window. But all I could see was the silhouette of the surrounding trees swaying with the wind. I listened intently, hoping to catch sight of whoever or whatever was on my roof. And the noises continued for what felt like hours, though it was probably just a few minutes. Eventually they stopped, leaving an unsettling silence behind. The following day, I went outside to inspect the roof. I didn't have a ladder tall enough to reach the top, but from what I could see, everything seemed fine. I didn't see any broken tiles, no obvious signs of damage. The whole situation was starting to make me anxious though. I figured maybe it was just my imagination. But the thought of someone being on my roof wouldn't leave my mind. I decided to take some precautions. I started keeping the porch light on at night and made sure all the doors and windows were securely locked before I went to bed. I even asked a neighbor if they'd noticed anything strange, but they said that they hadn't heard or seen anything unusual. A few nights later, I heard the sounds again, and this time, more pronounced and seemingly closer. The footsteps were slow, methodical, as if someone was carefully choosing their path across the roof. I was wide awake, heart pounding in my chest, and I felt trapped and powerless to do anything but listen. After that night, I couldn't shake the fear that someone was watching my house, trying to find a way in. I decided to install motion sensor lights around the perimeter, hoping to deter whoever was lurking around. I even considered installing a security camera, but that would take time and a bit of money to set up. The final straw came one particular windy night, and the noises started again, louder and more persistent. I sat there in the dark, every nerve on edge, when suddenly, a gust of wind sent a branch crashing against my window, startling me. I knew that I couldn't just sit there anymore, waiting for something bad to happen. So the next morning, I called a professional to inspect my roof properly. The news was a bit chilling. The inspector found evidence that someone had indeed been up there. There were marks consistent with footsteps, and there were a few loose tiles that looked like they had been recently disturbed. It was clear that someone had been on my roof, and probably more than once. I felt a sense of relief knowing that I wasn't crazy and just imagining things, but also a deeper unease knowing that someone had been so close to invading my home. So I took immediate action. I didn't care about the money anymore. I installed security cameras around the house, making sure that I catch whoever it was that was going up my roof. But ever since installing the cameras, I haven't heard anything. Yet, on some nights, I still feel on edge. If anything happens, I'll be ready, and I will surely update everyone. I would firstly like to state that I'm 17 now. I still live with my parents, obviously, and I live in a building in an area that crime doesn't typically occur. This incident happened 8 months ago, and I get terrified when I hear the slightest sound at night. For starters, I have a dog. To be precise, a Yorkshire Terrier. Yorkshire Terriers are known to be small, but they can be so fucking loud, and my dog is literally the definition of an ankle biter. And despite her size, she's pretty big, weighing around 17 pounds. Our dog has a terrible habit of drinking a shit ton of water at night and then waking us up to go pee. We have a patio, as we are on the first floor. Our patio is pretty spacious and is surrounded by a huge wall and a black fence that is sharp at the top to avoid any possible robbery. Like I said before, my area isn't known for high crime, but we have had encounters of people looking to steal quarters from our laundry machines. I wasn't fully asleep. Sure, my eyes were closed, but I could hear everything. Since the apartment is small and has one bedroom, I don't have much of an option but to share a bedroom with my parents. But I'm grateful that I still do, because I don't think that I would be able to sleep alone now after what happened. I know, you can call me a coward, but I am genuinely terrified. I hear my mom wake up, groggy and pissed off, because my dog started licking her. Usually, when my dog licks, it's because she needs to go outside to do her business. My mom stood up, opens our patio door, and then lets my dog outside. In that moment, my dog starts barking furiously and whimpering. My mom, being curious, goes down to check what the fuck is going on. And that's when I heard bloody screams from my mom, like the horror movie screams that you hear. I bolt up and my mom comes running inside our apartment, screaming for us to wake up and that there's someone in our patio. The moment that I heard that shit, my blood ran cold. I'm so thankful that my dad wasn't fully asleep either, and he got up and so did I. I followed after him. My first instinct for some reason was to protect my family, which is stupid because I'm a 17-year-old female that can't even do 10 push-ups. Anyways, I grab a knife from our kitchen, I go outside with my dad, and I step outside and I see this guy standing in our garden with garden scissors. My dad yells at him, "Get the fuck out or I'll call the police." The guy turns around, drops the scissors, and then starts begging my dad not to kill him. I'm not gonna lie, this guy seemed out of it, like he was high. The guy then gets up wobbly and jumps over the black sharp fence and doesn't leave, but instead paces back and forth, completely deranged. I don't know why, I'm still pissed at my parents for this, but they didn't call the police, and when I asked why, they just said that we'll explain later. My dog was still barking loudly at the guy, so my parents sent me and my dog to our bedroom and then locked us inside so we would be safe. I really contemplated on calling the police. I know, I should have. But hey, parents know what's best, right? And eventually, I knocked out and I gave up on waiting. The next morning, I woke up and I asked my mom what was wrong, and she said that the guy who broke in was apparently looking for his girlfriend who lived in our building but on the second floor. He was going to climb our balcony to get to her apartment. She said that she didn't want to call the police because she knew who he was, but she found it weird because the guy kept saying that he jumped over the fence to protect us because he had seen someone else break in our apartment. Trust me, when my mom told me, I literally made a what the fuck face. Since the man was high, I didn't question it though because he was batshit crazy. The crazy thing is, right after I got home from school, my mom tells me that she saw the guy roaming around again, and then he went up to her and apologized. He said that he was sorry for scaring us and that he was high as a kite, and that's why he acted that way. Anyway, I still don't know what to make of this situation, except that that guy traumatized me. Even though I don't know his intentions and what he planned to do. I hope he's actually getting the help that he needs. And as for my dog, I'm grateful that she is still here to protect us, as without her, I don't know what would have happened to my mom or us. This is a short one, but a long time ago, when me and my little brother were kids, we were playing outside in the backyard when a not-so-smooth creep decided to make himself known. For context, our backyard faced an alleyway that lots of people walked and drove down as a shortcut when they were trying to get somewhere. The fence we had was chain link and fairly easy to climb if anyone ever wanted to. But we also had a dog that fiercely defended the property and barked like a maniac whenever anyone passed by. So we never had any intruders. But one day, when me and my younger brother were outside and playing catch, or possibly badminton, a man in an old truck or van passed through the alley. He slowed down a bit and seemed to be watching us for a few seconds. At first, we didn't think much of it since everyone who drove through tended to slow down and drive carefully since it was a narrow space. But once he noticed that we were looking back at him, he hit the gas and then sped off. Uncomfortable by the situation, we just went inside and told our mom everything, and she suggested that we stay inside for the rest of the day. And to make things more scary, it was only after a few minutes inside that we heard a knock at the door, and when my mom peeked outside, we saw that it was the same guy from the alley on our porch. I can't really remember what he said or how he was trying to weasel his way in, but after we told our mom that that's the guy, she answered the door and told him to get lost and to never come back. He simply left, and we never saw him again after that. So, I'm not quite sure what his exact line of thinking was, but I know that story has become a bit of infamous in our family's collective memory. I recently had such a creepy experience that I felt I had to share it here. It happened a couple of weeks ago when I agreed to house sit for my cousin, Tiff. She was going on a short trip and she needed someone to watch her place and take care of her cat. I'd house sat for her before, and it was always a nice little break from my usual routine. Tiff's house is in a quiet neighborhood with tidy little homes and well-kept lawns. It's the kind of place where people know each other, and you'd assume nothing bad ever happens. Her house is cozy and nicely decorated, with lots of bright plants and big windows that let in plenty of natural light during the day. And at night, it's peaceful, with just the soft hum of distant traffic, and of course, the occasional bark from a neighbor's dog. The first evening went smoothly. I cooked myself a simple dinner, played with a cat, and then settled on the couch to read a book. And as the sky darkened, I didn't think much about the creaks and groans of the house. It was old and it had its own personality, like all old houses do. And just as I was drifting off to sleep in the guest room, I heard a noise. It was a soft thump, like something had fallen. I shrugged it off, thinking it might be the cat knocking something over. But then, I heard another sound, a faint creaking of the floorboards. My heart skipped a beat. It sounded almost like footsteps. I listened, holding my breath, but everything was silent again. I pushed the thought aside, telling myself that I was being paranoid. The next morning, I searched the house just to be sure that everything was fine. Nothing really seemed out of place. When Tiff called to check in, I didn't even mention the noises. I didn't want her to worry over nothing. But the following night, things got stranger. I had turned in early, tired from a long day at work, and just as I was falling asleep, I heard it again. Soft thumps, followed by a creaking noise. The sound seemed to be coming from the main floor. I felt a chill run down my spine. I listened intently, trying to convince myself that it was just the house settling. And then, I heard a faint shuffling noise, like something being dragged across the floor. It was unmistakable. Someone or something was inside the house with me. My mind raced with possibilities. I was scared but more confused. I sat up, unsure of what to do, and eventually decided to quietly check it out. I tiptoed down the stairs, careful to avoid the spots that creaked, and as I reached the bottom, I stopped to listen. The house was eerily quiet, except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. I checked the doors and windows, and all were locked. just as I had left them. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but the cat was acting weird with its hair standing on its back. I just returned to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. The last night was the worst. I took the cat in my room. I was on edge, trying to rationalize the noises. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, listening for anything unusual. And it wasn't long before I heard the noises again. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to muster the courage to get up and investigate. And just as I was about to step out of bed, I heard a distinct tapping sound like fingers drumming on a tabletop. It was coming from the living room. That was enough for me. I grabbed my phone, keys, and the cat, slipping quietly out the back door and then to my car. I then drove by to a nearby diner, not stopping until I felt safe, surrounded with a late-night crowd. I called Tiff and explained everything. She was as shocked as I was, and then assured me that she would get someone to check things out before she returned. And just a side note, I have no idea why me and Tiff did not think about calling the police at all. Probably because we had some bad experience with them when we were younger. So we try to avoid getting involved with them. But that's a story for another time. I just went home and brought the cat with me. The next day, a neighbor came by with Tiff's spare key and then went through the house. They found some evidence that someone might have been inside. A basement window, partially obscured by vines, was slightly ajar. It was the only thing that seemed out of place, but it was enough to confirm my fears. Looking back, I'm grateful nothing worse happened. But this experience left me shaken. I've learned to trust my instincts more, and I'm much more cautious about my surroundings, especially when I'm alone. I make sure to check every door and window lock to make sure that it's secured now. It's scary to think how easily someone could have harmed me, even in a seemingly safe neighborhood. This happened about a year or so ago, but I just read something fairly similar, and it reminds me how it still gives me the chills. I have 3 kids who were around 9, 7, and 2 at that time, and also living with my husband. We live fairly rural in the UK, just on the outside of a small village. Every night, I always check that the door is locked, and sometimes even the chain put across as well. This night, I was woken up very abruptly by a very harsh banging on the front door. At first, I thought it was just someone drunk, thinking that it was their house. But then they started trying to turn the handle. My husband wasn't near the door, and I stood on the stairs with my phone in case that I needed to call someone. My husband told the man that he had kids in here that were sleeping and just to go away right now. But the man started rambling and slightly slurring. It wasn't extreme slurring, but his voice wasn't quite right. It seemed clear that he was either on something or mentally unwell. He kept asking for a certain woman's name, and my husband told him that there was no woman with that name here and just to go away now. The man kept saying that we were hiding her and that he was coming in. During this period, there was a lot of very strange sounds coming from behind the door. Thumping, scratching, and another sound that I couldn't quite place. My husband then told him that I had called the police. He did a few more frantic thumps and then left because we heard nothing else. And we heard nothing else like him attempting this with the neighbors either. For a few hours I waited in case he came back. I had a tennis racket that I would have used if I had to. Luckily, it didn't have to come to that. In the morning, As it was a weekend day, I decided to check outside, and honestly, I did feel a little ill. There was a massive dent in the door, which I thought surely a fist alone wouldn't have caused. Then, on the door and the panels near the door, were fingernail marks and blood. It wasn't a massive amount, but enough that it needed to be washed off. Between the door and where the bins were was a smashed ashtray, also with blood on it and lots of pieces. One of the outdoor plants had also been tipped out, so the plant and the soil were all over the floor. My best guess is that he tried to smash it with the ashtray and then cut himself, but that's merely a speculation. My blood ran cold how clearly aggressive this man was, and we have absolutely no reason to be targeted. We told our neighbors, who were absolutely horrified, and they said that they thought that they heard something, but thought that it was a drunk. When we mentioned the woman's name, the neighbors said, "Oh, that's who used to live where we do." It was a few doors down, and she used to be into drugs and a few shady people, and the neighbor reckons that maybe it was one of her old drug-taking companions who was searching for her. Even now, there have been a few incidents in her house where police have been called, but I'm not sure what for. Now, we have a video doorbell and alarms fitted, so at least now, a button goes straight to the security system that if you don't answer, will send to the authorities. It didn't end in danger, but it so easily could have, and that's scary as hell. So seriously, that woman doesn't live here, and you absolutely insane door-knocking guy, please, let's not meet again. Hey everyone, this is your creepy sister. Thank you so much for watching the video. I do hope you enjoyed it. Also, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. It really helps the channel out. A big shout out to both my channel members and Patreon members. Thank you so much for taking your support to the next level. You guys are great. And again, to everyone, stay scared, because your fear feeds me.